Ezekiel chapter 36. Comfort to the land of Israel. You, son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel and say, Mountains of Israel, hear the word of Adonai. Thus says Adonai Elohim, the enemy has said against you, Aha, even the ancient high places have become our possession. Therefore prophesy, and they say, Thus says Adonai Elohim, because they ravaged and crushed you from every side, that you became the possession of the rest of the nations, and you became the talk and evil gossip of people. Therefore, mountains of Israel, hear the word of Adonai. Thus says Adonai Elohim to the mountains, the hills, the streams, and the valleys, the desolate wastes, and the cities that are forsaken, which have become prey and derision to the rest of the surrounding nations. Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, surely in the fire of my wrath I have spoken against the rest of the nations and against all Edom, and have taken my land for themselves as a possession with the joy of all their heart and contempt in their souls in order to seize it as plunder. Therefore prophesy to the land of Israel and say to the mountains and the hills, the streams and the valleys, thus says Adonai Elohim, behold, I have spoken in my wrath and in my fury, because you have suffered the scorn of the nations. Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, I have lifted my hand. Surely the nations that surround you will themselves suffer scorn, but you, mountains of Israel, you will shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit for my people Israel, for their return is near. For behold, I am for you. I will turn to you. You will be tilled and sown. I will settle a large population upon you, the whole house of Israel, all of it. The cities will be inhabited, the desolate places will be built up. I will multiply man and beast upon you. They will increase and be fruitful. I will cause you to be inhabited as you were before. I will do better for you than at your beginnings. You will know that I am Adonai. I will cause my people Israel to walk upon you. They will possess you, and you will be their inheritance. You will no longer deprive them of children. Thus says Adonai Elohim. Because they say to you, you are the devourer of men, and you deprive your nation of children. Therefore you will no longer devour men, and you will no longer deprive your nation of children. It is a declaration of Adonai. I will no longer let the scorn of the nations be heard against you. You will no longer bear disgrace from the peoples. You will no longer cause your nation to stumble. It is a declaration of Adonai. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, when the house of Israel lived in their own land, they defiled it by their way and by their deeds. Their way before me was like the uncleanness of a woman in her nidah. So I poured out my fury on them for the blood which they had shed upon the land, and because they had defiled it with their idols. I scattered them among the nations, so they were dispersed through the countries according to their way and their deeds. I judged them. Wherever they went among the nations, they profaned my holy name, since it was said about them, These are the people of Adonai, yet they had to leave his land. But I had concern for my holy name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the nations wherever they went. Therefore say to the house of Israel, Thus says Adonai Elohim, I do not do this for your sake, house of Israel, but for my holy name, which you profaned among the nations wherever you went. I will sanctify my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned among them. The nations will know that I am Adonai. It is a declaration of Adonai, when I am sanctified in you before their eyes, a new heart, new spirit. For I will take you from the nations, gather you out of all the countries, and bring you back to your own land. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean from all your uncleanness and from all your idols. Moreover, I will give you a new heart. I will put a spirit within you. I will remove the stony heart from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my ruach within you. Then I will cause you to walk in my laws, so you will keep my rulings and do them. Then you will live in the land that I gave to your fathers. You will be my people holy. You will be my people, and I will be your God. So I will save you from all your uncleanness. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful. I will not bring a famine upon you. I will multiply the fruit of the tree and produce of the field, so that you will no longer bear the disgrace of famine among the nations. When you remember your evil ways and your deeds that were not good, you will be disgusted with yourselves because of your iniquities and your abominations. Not for your sake will I do this. It is a declaration of Adonai. Let that be known to you. Be ashamed and confounded for your ways, house of Israel. Thus says Adonai Elohim, In that day I pronounce you clean from all your iniquities. I will cause the cities to be inhabited and the ruins to be rebuilt. The land that was desolate will be tilled instead of being a wasteland in the sight of all that passed by. They will say, This land that was a wasteland has become like the Garden of Eden. The waste, desolate, and ruined cities are fortified and inhabited. Then the nations that are left all around you will know that I, Adonai, have rebuilt the ruined places and replanted what was desolate. I, Adonai, have spoken to it, so I will do it. Thus says Adonai Elohim, I will again be inquired of by the house of Israel. To do for them, I will populate them with people like a flock, like the holy flock, like the flock of Jerusalem during her Moedim. So the waste cities will be filled with flocks of people. Then they will know that I am Adonai. Ezekiel 37. Dry bones live. The hand of Adonai was upon me. The Ruach Adonai carried me away He carried me out and set me down in the middle of the valley. It was full of bones. He led me all around them. Behold, there were very many on the floor of the valley. Behold, they were very dry. Then he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? I answered, Adonai Elohim, you know. Prophesy over these bones, he said to me. Say to them, dry bones, hear the word of Adonai. Thus says Adonai Elohim to these bones. Behold, I will cause ruach to enter you, so you will live. I will attach tendons to you, bring flesh on you, and cover you with skin. Then I will put breath in you. You will live. You will know that I am Adonai. So I prophesied just as I was commanded. As I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, an earthquake. Then the bones came together, bone to its bone. I saw, and behold, there were tendons on them. Flesh came up, and skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, Prophesy to the Ruach, prophesy, son of man, and say to the Ruach, Thus says Adonai Elohim, come from the four winds, Ruach, breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied just as he commanded me. The Ruach came into them, and they lived. They stood up on their feet, a vast army. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried up, our hope is lost. We are cut off by ourselves. Therefore prophesy and say to them, Thus says Adonai Elohim, Behold, I will open your graves. I will bring you up out of your graves, my people. You will know that I am Adonai when I have opened your graves and brought you up out of your graves, my people. I'll put my ruach in you and you will live. I will place you in your own land. Then you will know that I, Adonai, have spoken and that I have done it. It is a declaration of Adonai. Reunification of southern and northern kingdoms. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, You, son of man, take one stick and write on it, for Judah, for Bnei Israel join with him. Then take another stick and write on it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel joined with him. Join them to one another for yourself, as one stick, so they may become one in your hand. When the children of your people speak to you, saying, Won't you tell us what you mean by these? Say to them, Thus says Adonai Elohim, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel joined with him, and I will put them together with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick. Then they will be one in my hand. The sticks that you write on will be in your hand before their eyes. Then say to them, Thus says Adonai Elohim, Behold, I will take Bnei Israel from among the nations where they have gone. I will gather them from every side and bring them into their land. I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king to them all. They will no longer be two nations and never again be divided into two kingdoms. They will never again be defiled with idols, the detestable things, or with any of their transgressions. I will save them out of their dwellings in which they sinned. I will purify them, and they will be my people, and I will be their God. My servant David will be king over them. They will all have one shepherd. They will walk in my ordinances and observe my rulings and do them. They will live in the land that I gave to my servant Jacob, where your ancestors live. They will live there, they, their children, and their children's children forever, and my servant David will be their prince forever. I will cut a covenant of shalom with them. It will be an everlasting covenant with them. I will give to them and multiply them. I will set up my sanctuary among them forever. My dwelling place will be over them. My people, I will be their God, and they will be my people. Then the nations will know that I am Adonai, who sanctifies Israel, and my sanctuary is in their midst forever. Ezekiel 38, Gog's alliance invades Israel. The word of Adonai came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward Gog in the land of Magog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, Thus says Adonai Elohim, Behold, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws. I will bring you out with all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them splendidly dressed, a vast assembly with breastplate and shield, all of them wielding swords. With them will be Persia, Cush, and Put, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his troops, the house of Togarmah from the extreme north and all his troops, many peoples with you. Be prepared, prepare yourself, you and all your company gathered around you. Be a guard for them. After many days you will be summoned. In the latter years you will come back against the land that has been brought back from the sword and regathered from many peoples in the mountains of Israel, which has been a continual waste. But they were brought out from the peoples, when all of them are dwelling securely. You will come up, you will come like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land, you and all your troops and many peoples with you. Thus says Adonai Elohim. It will come to pass in the day that things will come into your heart, and you will devise an evil plan. You will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages. I will fall upon the quiet people who live securely, all of them living without walls, having no bars or gates, in order to seize, spoil, and carry off plunder, to turn your hand against the waste places now inhabited, and against the people gathered from the nations who have been acquiring livestock and property, who live in the center of the world. Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish, with all its young lions, will say to you, have you come to seize spoil? Have you assembled your company to plunder, to carry away silver and gold, to take away livestock and property, to make off with immense spoils? Therefore, son of man, prophesy, say to Gog, Thus says Adonai Elohim, in that day when my people Israel dwell safely, Will you not know? You will come from your place out of the extreme north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great company and mighty army. You will come up against my people Israel like a cloud covering the land. It will happen in the last day. I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me, when I am sanctified through you, Gog, before their eyes. Thus says Adonai Elohim, are you the one that I spoke about its former times through my servants, the prophets of Israel, who prophesied in those days for many years that I would bring you against them? In that day when Gog comes against the land of Israel, it is a declaration of Adonai. My fury will rise up in my nostrils, and my jealousy and fire of my wrath I have spoken. Surely in that day there will be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish in the sea, the birds of the heavens, the beasts of the field, all the creeping things that creep upon the ground, and all the humans upon the face of the earth will shake my presence. The mountains will be thrown down, the steep places will fall, every wall will fall to the ground. I will call for sword against him throughout all my mountains. It is a declaration of Adonai. Every man's sword will be against his brother. I will punish them with pestilence and blood. I will pour out rain on him, on his troops, and on the many peoples with him. A torrential rain with hailstones, fire, and brimstone. So I will magnify and sanctify myself. I will make myself known in the eyes of many nations, and they will know that I am Adonai. Ezekiel 39, to the destruction of Gog. You, son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, thus says Adonai Elohim, behold, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. I will turn you around, drive you along, and lead you up from the extreme north. I will bring you upon the mountains of Israel, then I will strike your bow from your left hand, and make you arrows drop from your right hand. You will fall on the mountains of Israel, you, all your troops, and the people that are with you. I will give you as food to all kinds of birds of prey and to the beasts of the field. You will fall in an open field, for I have spoken. It is a declaration of Adonai. I will send fire on Magog and those who live securely in the islands. Then they will know that I am Adonai. So I will make my holy name known among my people Israel. I will not let my holy name be profaned anymore. The nations will know that I am Adonai, the Holy One in Israel. Behold, it is coming, it will be done. It is a declaration of Adonai. This is the day that I have spoken about. The inhabitants of Israel's cities will go out and kindle fires with the weapons, shields and breastplates, bows and arrows, war clubs and spears. They will make fires with them for 7 years. They will not take wood out of the field or cut anything from the forest, for they will make fire from the weapons. They will plunder those who plundered them and loot those who looted them. It is a declaration of Adonai. On that day I will give Gog a burial place there in Israel, the valley of the travelers east of the sea. It will block those who travel through, since they will bury Gog and all his multitude there. Then they will call it the valley of Hamon Gog. The house of Israel will bury them for 7 months in order to cleanse the land. All the people of the land will bury them. It will be memorable for them, a day when I am glorified. It is a declaration of Adonai. Men will continually set apart to travel through the land and bury the travelers remaining on the face of the land in order to cleanse it. At the end of the 7 months, they will make their search. When they travel through the land, if any sees a man's bones, he will set up a sign by it until the barriers are buried in the valley of Hamon Gog. Hamonoah will also be the name of the city, so they will cleanse the land. You, son of man, thus says Adonai Elohim, say to every kind of bird and to every kind of beast in the field, assemble and come, gather from all around to my sacrificial feast that I have prepared for you, a great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel. You will eat flesh and drink blood. You will eat the flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, as rams, lambs, goats, bulls, all of them fatlings of Bashan. So you will eat fat until you are gorged, and you will drink blood until you are drunk, from my sacrificial feast that I have prepared for you. You will be filled at my table with horses and horsemen, with mighty men and all the warriors. It is a declaration of Adonai. Israel will know Adonai. I will put my glory among the nations. All the nations will see my judgment that I will execute, and my hand that I will lay on them. The house of Israel will know that I am Adonai their God from that day onward. The nations will know that the house of Israel went into exile for their iniquity, because they broke faith with me. So I hid my face from them and gave them into the hand of their enemies. All of them fell by the sword. I dealt with them according to their uncleanness and their transgressions. I hid my face from them. Therefore, thus says Adonai Elohim, now I will restore Jacob from exile. When I have compassion on the whole house of Israel, I will be zealous for my holy name. They will bear the shame and all their disloyalty by which they broke faith with me, when they were living securely in their land with no one making them afraid. When I have brought them back from the peoples and have gathered them out of their enemies' lands, I will be sanctified in them by the eyes of many nations, and they will know that I am Adonai their God. Since it was I who caused them to go into exile among the nations, and I who will gather them back into their own land, I will never again leave them there. I will never again hide my face from them, for I have poured out my ruach upon the house of Israel. It is a declaration of Adonai. Ezekiel chapter 40, measurements of a new temple. In the 25th year of our exile, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was struck down, on that very day the hand of Adonai was on me, and he brought me there. In visions, God brought me to the land of Israel and set me down upon a very high mountain. On it, toward the south, was something like the construction of a city. He brought me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like bronze. He had a linen cord in his hand and a measuring rod. He was standing in the gateway. The man said to me, Son of man, see with your eyes, hear with your ears, set your heart on all that I show you. For I brought you here in order to show you and report all that you see to the house of Israel. Behold, an outer wall was all around the house. The measuring rod in the man's hand was 6 cubits long, each of which was a normal cubit and a handbreadth. When he measured the thickness of the wall structure, it was 1 rod, and the height was 1 rod. Then he went up to the gate that faced east and went up its steps. When he measured the threshold of the gate, it was 1 rod wide. Also the other threshold was 1 rod wide. Each guard chamber was 1 rod long and 1 rod wide. The space between the chambers was 5 cubits. The threshold of the gate by the porch of the gate facing the house measured 1 rod. When he measured the porch of the gate toward the house, it was 1 rod. When he measured the porch of the gate, it was 8 cubits. Its pillars were 2 cubits. The porch of the gate faced the house. Now the chambers of the east gate were on 3 sides. Three on this side and 3 on the other side. The 3 had the same measurement. The side pillars had the same measure on the side and on that side. On this side and on that side. When he measured the width of the entrance of the gate was 10 cubits, and the length of the gate was 13 cubits. A barrier wall was in front of the guard chambers, 1 cubit on each side. Each chamber was 6 cubits on each side. When he measured the gate from the roof of the chamber to the roof of the other roof, the width was 25 cubits, door facing door. Then he did the pillars, 60 cubits. A gateway extended all the way around the pillar, all around to the pillar of the courtyard. Now from the front of the gate of the entrance to the front of the inner porch of the gate measured 50 cubits. There was shuttered windows toward the chambers and toward their pillars within the surrounding gate, and likewise the porches had windows all around inside. On each pillar were palm trees. Then he brought me to the outer court. Behold, there were rooms and pavement made for the surrounding court, with 30 rooms along the pavement. The pavement was by the side of the gates, as wide as the gates were long. This was the lower pavement. He measured the width from the front of the lower gate to the exterior front of the inner court. It was 100 cubits to the east and to the north. Next he measured the length and width of the gate in the outer court facing toward the north. Its guard chambers were 3 on this side and 3 on that side. Its pillars and its porches had the same measurements as the first gate, 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its windows, porches, and palm trees were the same measurements as the gate facing towards the east. Its stairway had 7 steps. Its porch was in front of them. A gate to their inner court was opposite the other gate, northward and eastward. He measured 100 cubits from gate to gate. Then he led me toward the south, and behold, there was a gate toward the south. He measured its pillars and its porches. They had the same measurements. The gate and its porch had windows all around, like the other windows, 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its stairways had 7 steps, and its porches were in front of them. It had palm trees on its pillars, one on this side and another on that side. There was a gate to the inner court toward the south. He measured from gate to gate toward the south 100 cubits. Then he brought me to the inner court through the south gate. When he measured the south gate, it had the same measurements. Its chambers, pillars, and porch had the same measurements. There were windows in it in the surrounding porch. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. There were porches all around 25 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. Its porch was toward the outer court. Palm trees were on its pillars. Its stairway had 8 steps. Then he brought me into the inner court towards the east. He measured it with the same measurements. Its chambers, pillars, and porch had the same measurements. There were windows on it, and its surrounding porch. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its porch was toward the outer court. Palm trees were on its pillars on the side, and on that side its stairway had 8 steps. He brought me to the north gate. He measured it with the same measurements. Its chambers, pillars, and porch. There were windows all in it all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its pillars were toward the outer court. Palm trees were on its pillars on this side and on that side. Its stairway had 8 steps. A chamber with its entry was by the pillars at the gates. There they rinsed the burnt offering. In the porch of the gates were 2 tables on this side and 2 tables on that side, on which to slaughter the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. Off to the side on the outside, as one goes up to the entry of the north gate, were 2 tables. On the other side of the porch of the gate were 2 tables. 4 tables were on one side, and 4 tables were on the other side. By the side of the gate, 8 tables in which they would slaughter. There were 4 tables of hewn stone for the burnt offering, 1.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1 cubit high. The entrance for the slaughter of the burnt offering and sacrifice were laid on them. Hooks, a handbreadth long, were fastened in the house all around. The flesh of the offering was to be placed upon the tables. Outside the inner gate in the inner court were chambers for their singers, one of which was at the edge of the north gate facing south, the one at the east at the side of the east gate faced north. He said to me, this chamber that faces toward the south is for the Kohanim who keeps charge of the house. The chamber that faces toward the north is for the Kohanim who keep charge of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, those from the sons of Levi who come near Adonai to minister to him. Then he measured the court. It was 100 cubits long and 100 cubits wide, a square. The altar was in front of the house. He brought me to the porch of the house. He measured each pillar of the porch 5 cubits.